You also need to make sure that your customers' metrics show up in your business's metrics. So like that to me is creating value. Yes, we can add on different tech and different ways of thinking and new ways of working, but at the very core, like we are just trying to solve a problem for the customer. Spatial computing, another thing. Like, I think our lives will become multimodal even more so than they are today and in ways that we have never even imagined. And I want to start having that conversation now. So I think this is where like AI has like a massive superpower, right?
My name is Jochem and Veer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called They.Do, the journey management platform for business decision-making. We raised over $50 million and are growing globally. Our enterprise customers include Ford, J&J, the Home Depot, and Pfizer. I mean, wherever you look, understanding customers is key to staying ahead. But in order to do this at scale, aligning so many different teams with the customer journey is incredibly hard, but it is possible. I really wish this podcast existed before we started our company because so many companies are organizing around journeys and there's so much to learn. So in order to share what I'm learning, what I'm hearing with our community, I meet with industry experts. And in my video podcast, I'm here to explore the world of business strategy, design, and journeys, customer journeys, to really get an understanding of how leaders are changing their way in their business. So let's dive into the show. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer intro. Today, I am speaking with Bill Staikos, and he is a senior experience executive, customer experience executive, with over 2 decades of experience in financial services, consulting, and tech. But most recently, he was the head of customer experience at BNY Mellon, leading global programs to transform client and employee experience. And we're going to dig into the differences of both probably today across the firm. But before that, he held senior roles at American Express, Freddie Mac, JP Morgan. He spent time at Medallia as an SVP of Industry Solutions, helping enterprises turn insights into business outcomes. He's been recognized as a LinkedIn top voice and named among the global top 50 CX influencers, basically reflecting his impact on the customer experience community worldwide. He's also the founder of the Be Customer Led podcast, but today he shifted his attention to writing a book on AI, and his new podcast, The Multimodal Experience, is coming out in October. On a personal note, and that's why the intro is a little bit longer, I first reached out to Bill, I think 2 years ago, just a cold email asking, or a cold LinkedIn message, I think, asking for feedback on They.Do. He didn't just respond, he gave thoughtful advice, took the time and encouragement of where we were going, and ultimately, he became an official advisor to the company. So we are among a list of companies like Apple, Bank of America, Marriott, and T-Mobile, who he has advised for, or to, or with. It speaks to who he is. Wise, generous, and a kind leader who has a real impact on me and also on many others in this space. I know. So I am very happy, Bill, that you could join me today. Welcome to the show.
Man, that was such a very kind and generous introduction. I really appreciate that. It's great to be here with you, Jochem.
So much is changing so fast today. Okay, so let's not go there right away. Let's start with the other end of the spectrum. In customer experience, what is still true today? That was true two decades ago when you started, and what is still the same?
So, gosh, 2 decades ago. I think, look, what hasn't changed is like the customer is still there, right? Like we forget about the customer sometimes because we've got technology, we've got change management, we've got new frameworks coming out, we've got new ideas, new ways of thinking. But at the end of the day, the customer still just wants to resolve their problem, buy your product, give you money to deposit it in the bank. Like we forget that there are very simple, straightforward needs that are foundational to a business, consumer to business or business to business relationship, because we get caught up in the jargon. The jargon is also what hasn't changed, right? Like we still talk about, journeys, we still talk about these frameworks, we still talk about this and that. And I just think that we get so caught up in this stuff that we really forget, like, hey, there's someone with a heartbeat and who really wants to get something done on the other end of the line or on the other end of that transaction. And that has not changed. That will never change.
Right.
Well, it may change a little bit over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, and we could talk about that. But like at the very core, what has not changed is we have a customer. They could be a business, they could be an individual or a family, but that hasn't changed. That will not change, at least in the foreseeable future.
Right. And they want to achieve an outcome. They want to hit their
Exactly
goal.
right.
They want to get the job done or complete the
100%.
task, right?
That's it. And it's very, and that at its core is what the work, that I've dedicated my professional expertise to, is just what are the foundational elements that are important to our customers and our clients, their families? How do we think about that total experience? That just hasn't changed, right? Yes, we can add on different tech and different ways of thinking and new ways of working, but at the very core, like, we are just trying to solve a problem for the customer.
So the problem is that you mentioned jargon, and it's actually funny. There's more of this even today, right? And I think like the AI role is not even making it easier; it's making it harder. There's a new jargon coming up, and
Yeah.
what I'm seeing, and we were also chatting before the podcast a little bit on this, but maybe we should dig in there. Is that CX as a practice isn't really getting it. It's not getting to the simplicity that you are talking about. We could argue, like, is CX even necessary as a department? Is it everyone's responsibility? While at the same time, the C-suite is optimizing their businesses for growth. So there's a bigger gap. And you are also very vocal about this gap in the content that you're producing. So, I mean, jargon is probably not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. So what's going on?
Oh man, where do we start? I don't know if we have enough time for the show on this one.
I'll guide you. I'll keep it
Thanks,
short.
I appreciate it. Look, I think that over the last 10 to 15 years, customer experience has become synonymous with surveys. And you have like the big kind of customer experience management players, right? You've got, and look, as a person who worked at Medallia, like, this is like, I think it's hard for me to say, but like, the Medallias and the Qualtrics and the In Moments of the world, they made a lot of money through feedback, right? And they really pushed that. Now, that wasn't wrong. Companies needed this to be able to deliver better value or more value to their customers. But CX became synonymous with surveys. Fast forward, and by the way, CX leaders, we use text analytics, which is AI, right? Natural language processing, just a branch of AI. We never really talked about it in that context, right? It was just about NPS scores and CSAT and customer effort and delivering these scores. That turned into, well, what else is there? Because now you have all this data on your customer and you're not using it to help us understand what's happening day to day. And by the way, if only 7% of my customers are responding to a survey, what's happening with the other 93%? CX leaders forgot about the 93%, right? And that has now manifested in, unfortunately, a lot of CX teams being let go en masse, CX leaders being let go, teams being dispersed, and you see this every day. And it's a real disappointment to me as someone who, again, over 20 years doing this work, it's a real disappointment to me. And so I think that CX leaders really need to think about the data problem, the architecture problem, the technology problem, the process problem, the people problem. And it's not a department. It's just like an individual or a couple of individuals trying to put information out there in the world, inside the company. And it's not a department, right? Like finance is a department, HR is a department, CX is not a department. We never solidified that as a discipline or as a department in the organization, and that's manifesting in weird ways now.
So are you saying it should be a department? Is that what you're saying?
I think it has to be, right? I think we've got the credibility and the talent and the information to be such value in an organization. I just don't think that CX leaders have, and I'm going to generalize, which maybe isn't fair, but like, I just don't think a lot of CX leaders have stepped up to that to define it as such.
Yeah. So when leaders in the business, general leaders in the business, are optimizing for growth, and then CX teams are optimizing for counting the survey responses, that's like the gap that you're painting here.
Look, and in the last, let's say, 30, 40 days, I've been speaking with a lot of CX leaders, business leaders, executives. Everyone is focused on growth and everyone is focused on AI. The pendulum and the budgets have certainly shifted to the CIO and the technology and the COO organization, right? I'm seeing a little bit of a shift back to the business because, MIT came out with a study too, right? 95% of, AI POCs fail, which is fine. That's a nice headline, but there's more to it than that. It's shifting back. And I really think that CX has a huge opportunity right now to be part of that conversation with the pendulum coming back to say, we can't forget about the customer. Yes, we should absolutely be running POCs, AI POCs that focus on growth, that focus on efficiency, that help enhance the culture of our organization. But we cannot forget about the customer here, and they can play a central, and still can play a central role in that. But they've got to understand the tech, they've got to understand the customer beyond the survey, and they've got to understand the business and the strategy and what the business is trying to achieve.
Right. So how do you think about today's customer experience function creating that value for customers, but also for the business? I mean, one thing is is value still the right framing? Should we think about that differently? But what I'm more interested to hear is that if that role is shifting, the big problem that was underpinning all of this is that customer experience teams typically didn't have execution capacity. They were the report monkeys, quote unquote. And they were actually sharing reports that no one acted on because the backlogs, the roadmaps, everyone was busy with other things. And then they came with an insight that couldn't be actioned. So where do you believe the modern customer experience function should create that value? What should they do differently than where the practice has been?
Well, one, I think it starts with defining what is value,
right?
What is to the company, right? Because it's not delight. You can't put a financial number on delight. You can't put a financial number on satisfaction. You can create nice correlations that look pretty on paper, right? But so one, I think you got to start with what is value, right? I think starting there is really important. What is valuable to our customer and what is valuable to our business, and how do the two come together? Where do they come together? That's where you start, number one. Number two is, I think that the whole, hey, we're just a reporting team and that's what the business wants, I think that's BS, right? If you are a leader in the organization, it is your responsibility to figure out how to create value for your company as it defines value. As a leader of a team, you then need to connect that to how your team creates the value as part of that value creation for the business. You also need to, and this is really important, you also need to make sure that your customers' metrics show up in your business's metrics. So that to me is creating value. That to me is getting out of the old field and tab days when I was tabulating stuff by hand, right? That to me is, you are now speaking a different language in the organization because you are strategic, you are forward thinking, you are showing up differently in the organization, probably than 80% of the people in your business. And you're not just thinking about metrics and reporting. Now you're saying, here's how this stuff connects, right? And by the way, if you are a leader of a team, you can call up other leaders in the organization and say, this is real data that's happening. I need you to go take action. I need you to put this into a sprint plan. I need you to put this into your objectives as you think about the second half of the year. I need you to be thinking about budget for 2026 to go and affect change. That's your responsibility. It's not just, oh, I was just hired to do this. That's just phoning it in, man. I don't accept that at all. So
what are the teams that are doing this? So maybe the elements of the team, is that a skill will gap that we're seeing? Is it more like an organizational constraint, or a basic reluctance of evolving the function to today's standards? Where do you think the biggest problem actually is in having that strategic lens to the business, tying business outcomes to where the customer experience friction occurs, and how to think about budgeting, how to think about planning? What is it? One of those three, or maybe you have a different angle on that.
I think it's all of it. Unfortunately, this is where this is why it's such a hard problem to solve, right? One, the business sees the team as, oh, this is where I get my CSAT or NPS PowerPoint from every month or every quarter, whatever that cadence is. Okay, that's a problem you got to get through. However, if you start talking about the work that you're doing in the context of someone's objectives or goals for the year and how you can help them achieve, okay, then you can start having a different conversation. I think there is a skill will piece from a CX leader's perspective, right? I hear a lot of, oh, the business doesn't get it. The CEO doesn't want it. They just want their NPS score. Like, well, don't put it on the CEO, man. Like, you've got a responsibility here as a leader in your company and a professional to change the narrative. Like, that's how you will survive. That's how your team will survive, right? By you as an individual leader changing the narrative. And then finally, I think it's about talent on the team and team structure, right? Like it's not just about having, voice of the customer experts and survey people. Like, you need data people. You need people who understand finance. You need people who understand data architecture. You need data science. You need technologists. I think the role of the VOC the CX team really does need to evolve in a significant way for us to be able to challenge and change the narrative around sort of big CX.
Yeah, everything we do is so highly cross-functional today. Like,
totally,
there can't be anything that is almost like one team operates in isolation. So that makes it impossible for an organization to actually have CX run this, because they're not responsible for it, but they have that like horizontal lens across all these different teams, but they lack the capabilities, or they lack expertise in data analytics and business architecture. So when they are starting to do this, what should leaders do to actually like make sure those efforts are aligned with what matters to the business? Because I think that, sure, maybe even the modern CX leader has this lens that you're explaining. I mean, you are the example of this, right? If you come into a business, I assume this is going to be your number one ask, is like, let's connect the dots. Let's make sure that I'm responsible for that. But even if people say, yes, you are, in reality, there's more to it. So what would be the steps that an organization needs to uncover to actually make a stride in that? The other thing that, and then I'm curious what you said, the other thing that I'm seeing is that in the C-suite, even if growth is a priority, it should be customer-centric growth. We're all about the customer. There's no denial of that. It's not like customer experience has decreased in priority. If I'm seeing anything, it has increased in priority.
Yep.
And yet the CX team is not empowered. So what should an organization do?
So one, I let me agree with you like 100%. I think customer experience as a topic, as a customer as a narrative, has never waned in importance. And you're right, 100%. It has only continued to increase in importance. But we have to really be in tune with the way that customer is being talked about, right? Use the language that the business is using. So, we shouldn't be in there talking about surveys. We shouldn't be in there talking about journey maps. We shouldn't be in there talking about, pick your sort of jargon, design thinking even. These are all tools to create outcomes. And for me, I think it starts with put the CFO lens on, right? If you can't map a CX investment to a business metric, the CEO and the CFO and the CEO, already obsess over, right? Growth, operating leverage, risk reduction. These are like real board level like topics. I think you're just playing the wrong game, right? Look, none of this is easy, right? I'm not saying like, hey, tomorrow go in and start doing this and it works, right? It doesn't happen that way. This is an evolution over time. You've got to keep on chipping away at it. So you do need resilience. But I think it starts with understanding, how is the business talking about customer, right? And then how do I fit into that conversation? And then how do I start picking up some of this language and so they can understand me, right? I have a toolkit that's sort of broader customer experience that I can use to help deliver the outcomes they're looking for, that balances what the customer needs, but what the business needs. But I think that's step one.
Right? It's hilarious to think about it, right? When you think customer experience professionals should be the most customer-centric in a business, and then they care about the customer, but the moment they need to walk into the consumer of their data, let's say that's the internal customer, disconnect. It doesn't work. Like, break it down. So I agree, like CX is the toolkit. If at the board level, we talk about risk reduction, we talk about cost, margin, growth. It's so hard to tie the initiatives together. There's so many steps in between. Maybe we should can you give an example of how you have actually pulled that together? Like on any of these axes? Like how do you break it down to something that the customer experience team can actually do so that it impacts risk, cost, margin, growth, whatever you want?
So I won't mention the name, but let's just say in the last large enterprise I worked for, we'll leave it at that. You mentioned them on the intro.
I think people can connect the dots.
Yeah. So I had a very different team, and I was really fortunate, frankly. So we had data science, we had data architects, data visualization experts and designers. We had sort of your traditional insights and change management resources and talent as well. But and data science. So I said, look, one of my roles as a CX leader is to reduce churn. Okay. I can go and do a survey and I can figure out and go survey people who left and say, why did you leave? Right. Or I can go look at like exits. Everybody does sort of like an exit review. I can go mine that data and figure out why did they leave? Right. At the end of the day, it's always someone writing something down, right? An internal review, probably a salesperson writing down why the company left. Could there be bias? Maybe. They're human. Survey filled out. Could there be bias? Maybe. They're human. Or I can go to one of my data scientists and I could say, you know what? Pull 3 years of data, look at every time a customer has gone business at risk, meaning like internally we've flagged them red or whatever that might be. Look at why people have left in the CRM notes and build me a model to identify and determine churn risk on clients based on financial and operational activity. Okay. 4 months, built a model, 76% accuracy. Fantastic. That got the attention. And then it's like, okay, well, if we look at this total number, like what's the total number that we can retain this year? $200 million. Right? Okay. Well, we need to process then if a client is identified as a potential churn risk, we need a process to go bring them back. Right? That is, now you have to have a data science resource, you have to have visualization expert, right? Like I was really lucky to have the capability on the team. These were fantastic people. But that got people's attention, right? That was a bi-weekly call with the CEO to review this stuff, right? Now you're in the room. Now you're now you're leading the team that developed this capability, right? Now you're in the hands of hundreds of people looking at this data every day, figuring out, is my client at risk of churn and why, right? Then they can go do something with that. So that's one example, but a real one. I mean, I can even take a survey example if you want, right? And I'll name this brand, at Freddie Mac. We looked at everyone who was giving an NPS score of 9 or 10. Gave that to salespeople and said, look, these customers have said they would recommend to a colleague. Go call them, see if we can increase business. Guess what happened? We increased business because of those phone calls. So like there's so many things that you can do to be able to create value for your company, right? That also then earn you the right to be able to do like the real sexy kind of CX type work as well, right? As well as give you the resources. Because like, gosh, if Bill could save us $200 million, like if we gave him more resources, like what else could he do?
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave a review. It makes all the difference. The Experience Edge podcast is where I interview business leaders, CX pioneers, and the best designers who share their insight on creating business impact, having an edge on the customer experience. Do you want more exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access? Check out the Experience Edge podcast on YouTube and LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing. Now let's get back to the conversation. You know what's striking about these two examples, and I think this is a good lesson for everyone listening, this is everyone wants to have a seat at the table. Everyone wants to create impact. But what I'm also noticing is then when people have those insights, they want to create that impact. What you're actually describing is, no. I'm actually creating an actionable insight that speaks a business language that people care about So they take action, and I'm taking the credit for it. Like, of course, you're not taking the credit for it, but like you can say, like, "Hey, Bill is saving us 200 million because of all the work that you've done." And ultimately, the team took action to, work with the churn risks to prevent them from churning to save those 200 million. So it's not that you had to do all of it yourself, but you were able to mobilize. You were able to help the teams to say, "Yes, it's important. I believe your data is accurate, and now we can act on it."
100%. And look, I'm a huge believer in, and I've said this in multiple different formats. Always start where the most revenue is at risk. So where's the leaky bucket as an example? Great place to start. Even for journeys, show me the product or the service with the biggest revenue in the company, right? If I'm Apple, the iPhone, right? Let's map that journey out. Like, how do people buy an iPhone, right? You will absolutely find opportunity to improve not only the experience, but also improve business metrics like revenue or et cetera. So, when you do that, you create a different, that creates a different narrative. And people are like, looking at it like, well, I didn't think that's what CX people did. Oh, no, this is what CX people should be doing. We should be helping you drive these outcomes, right? By creating the path for you to do it, right? I didn't do the actual work on the other end in terms of retaining, to your point, but I created the glide path for that to happen, right? Through data, through information, through insight. So,
well, what makes it so difficult? Because it's so simple, right? When you put the journey in front of people and you have the data, not just like an NS5 based like interview trajectory, and then here's a journey map, but really like, here's the business metrics, here's the outcomes we're striving for, here's this all connected. Like, yes, people understand the problem, and then the day after is like back to business. So what makes it so difficult for organizations to coordinate around journeys, to bring this front and center? Like another big topic, but the first big topic we had, like we tackled in 10 minutes. So we can do this one in 10 minutes as well. But
I think that, it's a couple of things. One, it's, how does, like, I have a mandate. I have objectives that I need to achieve. I need to go deliver this major project this year. How does what you're doing fit into what I'm doing? Right. I think that's number one. So how do I, back to like understanding your stakeholders' annual sort of goals, right? You're a sales leader, you've got to increase revenue. If you're an operations person, you got to drive efficiency. If you're a marketing person, you've got to increase or improve retention or pipeline, et cetera, et cetera. Like, understand your stakeholders' metrics. How can you influence them? Number two, it comes down to incentives, right? Like, everybody wants their bonus at the end of the year. It's how they provide for their families. Like, that's not rocket science, right? Like, we all think that way. Everybody wants a better life for their children, right? Like, how do I help you increase your bonus, right? Like, really great example. Right now, like, every company is talking about growth for sure, but every company is looking at their cost structure. How do I take expense out of the system, right? That's why AI is so interesting and popular right now, right? But one of the more interesting conversations I have a lot right now is like, I've got 20 different tools all doing kind of the same thing. How do I kind of rationalize this stuff to cut my costs, right? As a CX leader, you can absolutely look at your MarTech stack, your CX tech stack, et cetera, and say, how should all of these be connected to deliver value for the customer, right? And what do we really need, and where do we have an opportunity to improve? That's not doing it alone. That's going to your CTO or someone in your technology who owns the tech, say, look, I think we have an opportunity here to streamline and minimize. Can I work with you to do that? Because I see opportunity on my end. There might be opportunity elsewhere in the firm. Like, go get a couple, 3, 4, 5 people together and figure it out. You don't have to do it alone. And I think we as leaders, we want to solve the problem and be sort of the champion and the hero, right? But at the end of the day, nothing in business gets done alone. And in fact, when you go try and do that, if you go try and run alone, people are like, hey, this isn't your job, right? But when you go in partnership with a shared sort of goal, that's when you really gain traction.
So what they're describing is mostly like the CX function, the leadership, should go proactively find what do people care about, what are the metrics they're measured by, how does it
100%.
tie into their bonus, so that we can earn our trust within that organization. Well, what
Yeah.
if the opposite is also true? Like, why are business leaders that have their KPIs not necessarily looking for the CX team to solve their problems? Or in some organizations they are. I don't know what your experience is, but like, why does that not work the other way around? Because it sounds a lot like it's a supporting function to the business, which in a lot of cases it is. So you would expect a business leader think like, we're so inefficient. Hey, Bill, help me figure this out.
That's a great question. I can't speak for how other leaders think. I do think that there's, a lot from a leadership or middle management perspective. There's a lot of, I have these 5 things to accomplish this year, and I know how to do it, and I'm just going to go run and do it, right? And I've got resources, a team, whatever that might be. I'm not going to look for outside help. I think unfortunately, there's too much of that, but that's not necessarily other business leaders maybe not looking at the CX team for help. It's those other business leaders that also are not going and looking for help outside either, right? Like one of the biggest markers for me as any leader is like, how to raise your hand and ask for help, right? And not when things are going wrong, right? Like you ask for help when you want to solve a problem. And that to me is like something that businesses generally do not teach. Especially in the US, right? We've got this big like hero complex. Like we want to go like do it on our own and, scrappy, whatever. Like, yeah, that like works in some context, but like at the end of the day, like it takes a village, man. That's why these enterprises have hundreds of thousands of employees, right? Like go find a person that can help you. Just call up and say, I need your help. You'd be surprised.
And then that's where the journey comes back in, because even if that team goes off with their own budget and their own priorities and just runs, they will hit the walls. They will hit the edges of the silo where they're in and say, hey, I actually need you to do X, Y, Z so 100%. I can do me.
100%.
So is that why journeys will never go away and yet are still unaccepted, because we all want to be the hero of our own team? And at first we try to solve everything on our own and then realize like, oh, hang on a minute. We're actually so connected across the customer experience.
Well, look, you've talked about this, right? Like journeys, connect silos. They don't like break them down, right? Like businesses aren't going to get rid of their silos today or tomorrow, right? Like, but I think having the tools to be able to bring silos together. So as a leader, we saw this at Chase, right? Like think about the customer who has a credit card, a mortgage, a car loan, check-ins and savings accounts, maybe investment accounts with you. That's a lot of business with one bank, financial institution, right?
And a lot of different teams.
But if you go talk to like the head of card or the head of auto or the head of, the mortgage business, they're all like, I need to deliver my experience for the mortgage business, right? Like there's no kind of like horizontal thread. There is now actually. Years ago, we started working on some stuff that like created a horizontal thread across a lot of businesses. But like in many banks today, I should say, or many financial and services institutions, like those stovepipes, so to speak, still exist and they're hard. Everybody has their goals and objectives to deliver on, right? Journeys as a tool fundamentally changes that because it helps people see how Bill, with 7 products across 5 different stovepipes, is interacting, right? Like, and as a Chase customer, like my auto, my mortgage, my savings, like all those statements also look different. And also like, even the branding was different in many cases, right? So like, that's why journeys are really important to be able to bring in so people can understand the full breadth and context of the relationship. It shouldn't be some static piece of wall art. And I know that may ruffle some feathers for people because yes, even wall art has its role and its place, but like these things should be alive and be working in real time and in unison so people have the data to make decisions. So the head of auto can call the head of mortgage and say, hey, guess what? I noticed something really interesting, right? Here are 5 things that we could be working on together to help drive business for the both of us, right? But without that data and without that understanding, that conversation doesn't necessarily just happen, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. And this is where I see journeys play a role in connecting the dots, because so having them move away from the static map that you make once based on a project, I think we're past that.
Yeah.
Where we are seeing it.
Maybe.
Yes. Well, we are past that. Maybe like a lot of businesses are there.
Yeah,
no, you're right. No, but that is true. But when we take financial institutions like banks, I'm seeing a lot from the inside. And I'm seeing every team taking the notice of a customer journey very seriously. Some of the banks that I've seen internally have entire journey frameworks, data models that they're using to connect the dots. To your point, the business is still organized functionally or by department, and they have their own goals. So that's step one. But they have typically a matrix organization, or like are still grappling with the Spotify models of this world, right? So they have this notion of like cross-functional alignment is critical, and journeys help us. So what I wanted to say, like we're past like the static artifacts, is that AI is solving for insight generation, making sure that the data is accurate. So that's one piece of it, processing all that feedback. But the other is, I think, and this is the critical one, is that the context and the orchestration, not necessarily on the customer experience level. So not the orchestration of like Bill is seeing an email, Jochem gets a text message, and then it happens at different times. Like the decisioning engines behind it, that's not what I mean. But it's like the orchestration between the mortgages and the cards business. It said like, here's the shared opportunity we have. So the first step is context. What can we as a bank end-to-end agree on that we use as a shared context? So maybe we should shift gears into AI, because the journey is one tool to create that shared context. But I think like analytics and data processing are considered solved problems in AI, even though it's like very early stages. But contextualization and orchestration are not. And I believe that the journey plays a critical role in both, because it's by definition a horizontally aligning tool across these different teams, across mortgages and cards. So where do you see this going? Because the context, I think, is the next problem we should solve, that both of those leaders can go together and say, we at least agree on this. It's not like there's my metrics and here's your metrics. So what is that shared context that we actually need? And of course, journey is one thing, but like I wanna pick your brain on this.
So I think this is where like AI has like a massive superpower, right? In being able to stitch together large volumes of customer and employee signals for that matter. And maybe we can touch on EX a little bit here too. Right? Marketing, product, employee, service, operations. How do you bring this into one large living picture? Right? Like we can't process all this information, right? AI can produce sort of the context of what's happening through a journey with that customer. So people upstream and downstream go, aha, right? And that's really, and like get them out of like their siloed thinking, I've got to deliver these 5 things. Well, maybe I need to deliver 6 actually, because here's this other thing that we should be working on, right? And also orchestration, by the way, depending how you define it, like you cannot do orchestration without journeys. It is physically impossible. Like, and actually will just create poor experiences, at scale that'll just piss customers off. So if you don't have that context of what's happening end to end for a customer, going to buy a product or going to buy a service, you cannot figure out, or you cannot nudge that customer down sort of the happy path for them and for you as a company without understanding sort of the pretext, right? So I think this is where AI fundamentally is and can be playing a major role in organizations, certainly more so. But that's absolutely critical in terms of like, how do we use this to drive the outcome, right? Like a purchase, that's an outcome, right?
Yeah, so the orchestration in your example would actually be like on the individual customer level. Like, do we know where Bill is and what he needs next? Can we guess? Can we predict? Can we make sure that it's accurate?
We could do that today, right? That's not like new technology or technology that doesn't exist, right? So like, yeah, I think that, and I hate to use sort of the the buzzwords like hyper personalization or personalization, like I think, whatever. But like, I think that, I mean, actually, that to me is orchestration and experience orchestration. And as a customer, and I use the term experience actualization to kind of like play off of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As a customer, if I'm buying from a brand and they are delivering to me in real time, like what I need and helping me down this path constantly and easily, I am manifesting that experience along with them, right? Yes, they're kind of nudging me to do X, Y, and Z, but I came to do X, Y, and Z anyway, right? So, yeah, I like, but you cannot do that without context. You cannot do that without the advent and the capability of AI in the mix. Just not possible to do.
What I also see in orchestration, so this is orchestration on a customer level, but that assumes that we have all the technology and the solutions already like ready to go, and you can just mix and match and get whatever you need out there to the customer. But what actually is the other part of orchestration is like aligning the different teams internally to say, if you build this, well, we need also the marketing website to say this and the onboarding flow to guide us there and the supporting materials they get and the support agents they call to know that this is coming. So therefore, all of us need to work on the solution together.
Yeah.
And I think that internal orchestration at the enterprise level, right? If you have a small team of 50 to 100 people, like that could be doable with a lot of documentation and some Slack messages. But if you have a 200,000 person organization, how do you coordinate that? How do you orchestrate that? And I think that's the critical thing, because the way we do it today is like we have silos, we have goals, we have KPIs, we have OKRs, we have strategies, and we have metrics. That's how we try to orchestrate the bunch. But I think where this is actually going is way more fluid. The way it actually played out on the customer experience orchestration itself, when we apply that to the business, I think this is fascinating, where I can be super helpful using the journey context to then coordinate with all the different parties involved, which are usually a lot. And you can't see who's what, where in the business all the time. But AI can. I mean, that's the theory, right?
There's two pieces to this for me. One is like, imagine like the service issue automatically pulls in risk, product, operations, all the relevant parties into the same workspace with the relevant information, context, and insight for them to work together to act. That's not, I mean, the capabilities exist today to do that, okay? That's one piece of the orchestration. At the top of your question, where I thought you were going, but I think it's important to kind of highlight, you've got change management on one level. So like, how do I get this capability or new way of working or new way of thinking? How do I get this into the hands of individuals so they can use it effectively and they know how to use it in the context of their day-to-day job, right? And how it might even evolve. But then there's this also notion of change leadership above that by creating the vision. Here's where we're going. Here's why it's going to benefit the customer. Here's why it's going to benefit the company. Here's how it's going to benefit you as an individual. It's going to make you faster, better, smarter, right? Not here to replace you, but it's going to help support you in your role and become even better at what you do. You know, that change leadership component, as well as change management for that matter, but those pieces are really lacking in businesses, right? Like a lot of people that I talk to, like, hey, they just dropped like, ChatGPT 5.0 on my desktop, but like, I don't know how to use this thing. Like, you can't just give people tools and say, hey, now you're AI-fied, like go forward, like become better. Like that doesn't work that way, right? So yes, the tools and using AI to be able to bring the right resources into a shared workspace to figure out what to do next, or even kind of like drive the workflow, right? For people to go and act. But then sort of the change component on the other side is like, how do you help those individuals use those tools, help them like understand what the tools are there to do for them, and how they can use them effectively in a day-to-day setting. So that's a really big task. It's really, really important. I just don't, a lot of companies just don't do that well, or they don't do it at all because it's hard.
Yeah. So let's assume the The vision is there. People are on the highest level saying it's important and therefore putting some goals behind this. The other problem at the other end of the spectrum is the data itself. Even though you just stepped over and said like, yeah, the technology is available to bring all that data together, that is a hard job, right? It's in proprietary systems. It's on physical servers installed in some basement. It's like in cloud solutions. It's like everywhere, and every team has it differently, and legacy software. So it's a data problem to begin with. It's a vision problem. Well, if you don't have a vision or a strategy to do it, nothing will start anyway. So that's a problem. And then we bring it down to people in their day-to-day. So there's multiple parts on this, but let's say the vision is there. An organization is moving in this direction. Where should they start? Like, what are the right first steps to take?
Well, I think, at the top of the conversation, Jochem, we talked about like defining value. Why are we doing this? What is the problem? Why is it an important problem? And what is the value of solving it? Right. Just getting real clear on understanding those things so everyone can be on the same page. And by the way, that's important because then everybody understands their role in solving that problem too. Right. So before you talk about technology, before you talk about sort of workflows, before you talk about data, let's just get the right five people around a conference room table, virtually or in person, and figure out like, what are we trying to solve and why is that important for us? Right? Just ground level. Then you can start to think about, okay, what resources do we have internally already to solve this problem? You likely, if you're an enterprise, you likely have all those resources, right? CX team included, to be able to go solve those things, right? Then you can start asking, well, what technology capabilities do we need to solve for this? What does that look like? Do we have those today? Are they available in the marketplace? If not, why not? Et cetera. So like, I think it just comes down to just one, defining the problem, defining if it's a problem worth solving, agreeing that it's a problem worth solving, and then kind of defining the parameters of what do we know, what do we don't know, so what do we have to go find out.
Yeah. So a lot on this is happening on the axis of like AI, productivity, efficiency right now. Starting from the CIO, should the CX function, the customer experience teams, actively get involved there?
If they're not in that conversation, like I'm worried. I'm like, there's no hope for us, right? Because the CIO should be, yes, they've got to be worrying about like tech and like make sure that it's connected and make sure that their dollars are optimized. But, technology to me is always the question. It's never the answer, right? And I go back to like, what problem were we trying to solve? CX leaders have a lot of that information, right? Then they could go to their CIO and say, you do or do not have the tech to solve these problems, right? So what's the plan? What are you going to do about it? I think it's a fair conversation to be able to have, a fair question to ask of your CIO. So, to me, like, that's fundamentally can be a core part of like where a CX leader can insert themselves and start being part of that conversation.
Could they be overruled by people understanding like, oh, customer insights, friction in the journey, that's critical for us, but it is a technology problem, not a functional problem we should solve with people that are experts in this, and therefore it shifts entirely back to the CIO or to IT or marketing, where we're not going to be involving customer experience at all because we believe like we have the data. So let's use AI to, analyze and put it in the right buckets.
Yeah, look, perhaps, I feel badly for that corporate culture if that's the way people are acting with each other, right? But like, it comes down to like, look, I have information that will help you solve a problem or identify a problem that you didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Right? That's okay too. It doesn't mean you have to go solve it today, right? But it means that we're aware, right? And that we should be putting it on the roadmap and go solve it. So, and again, like, you said this, like no one doesn't like the customer. People are like, customer, forget it. Like, I don't buy that. So like, it's about framing things in the right way. It's about framing things in language that they will understand. And it's about framing things in a way that says, I'm giving you an opportunity to create value for this company, And I will give you the insights to do that in a very clear and succinct way. You've got to go act on it. If you don't go act on it, then I'm going to make sure that this problem doesn't go away for you too, right? Like, you can say that in a nicer way, right? But like, I think that's equally as important. When I was working in Zurich, the president of one of the country presidents said, for 3 years you come back and you keep on telling me the same 3 issues. I'm like, yeah, it's because you haven't fixed them. I mean, he didn't really appreciate that, but like, I probably could have finessed that language. But anyway, topic for another day. But like that at the end of the day is the conversation, right? Like, yeah, I don't want to come in here every year and tell you the same thing. Like, do you think that's fun for me? Right?
What happened? Like, where are you?
They actually want to fix that. So he kind of looked at me and was like, "Oh crap, he's right." He took that as an opportunity to say, "Okay, look, let's put this on the agenda." Went to the COO. We worked really closely with the CEO. It was a fantastic relationship, and we'll fix those things, right? So, like how it's not fun for someone to say, "Well, your NPS is still the same last month." Like that's not fun for anybody, right? So, let's go fix this stuff, right? These are the things that will improve it if you're an NPS shop and you believe in that stuff. So,
Bill, you're going to launch a new podcast. It's called the Multimodal Experience.
Yeah.
Is that a take on the traditional cross-functional experience, or where are you going with this?
So I have a real problem with this sort of dangerous narrative that AI is going to crush the universe. And if you look back over hundreds of years of technological advancement and innovation, like the world has become better, people have become better, our lives have become better. And there's so much conversation right now on like what benchmarks has like Anthropic or OpenAI surpassed, or how I'm firing 700 contact center agents because the AI's chatbots can do all the work. I think that's the wrong conversation to have. And I think that there are capabilities, AI included, but things like wearable, extended reality, et cetera. Like all of these are going to be part of our lives and are going to shape the way that we interact with brands every day. And they're also going to shape our lives as employees inside companies too, right? And I don't think we're having that conversation enough. So I think our lives will really quickly, spatial computing, another thing. I think our lives will become multimodal even more so than they are today, and in ways that we have never even imagined. And I want to start having that conversation now. That to me is just really interesting. I'm hoping it's interesting for other people, but we're going to launch our first episode on October 1st. Really special guest for that episode too. Don't want to let the cat out of the bag just yet. But I think that's a conversation and an important one worth having. And my hope is that CX leaders in particular will look at this and say, well, if my customer is multimodal, or if my customer is even an AI agent at that point, like what do I need to be doing differently to make sure that I am, if it's just surveys, how do I really need to just rethink how the surveys I've got out there are doing, right? Like, so that I'm hoping that conversation resonates. It's been a fun process to launch a new podcast, some relearning, but I'm really excited for it.
I can imagine. So we are going to keep an eye on your announcement of your first guest, cool. October 1st. Everyone should listen. We're going to put a link in the show notes to your pod when it comes out.
Cool.
I wanted to dig into more on value, but maybe we should do a second round of this at some point in the future.
I would love it.
We went from left to right and really deep on some of the topics. And that's what I really appreciate about you. It's over those last 2 decades and the knowledge and the wisdom you've accumulated, but keeping it simple. What hasn't changed is like the customer is still there. We're solving problems for the business and the customer. Like you are right. And yet it's so nuanced. So Bill, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's really been my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Jochem.
All right, and that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found it valuable today, Don't forget to subscribe to the Experience Edge on your favorite podcast channel, leave a review, and share it with your team. I'd be delighted. Today's episode was brought to you by Daydo, an AI journey management solution for enterprise. To have an edge on your business strategy and to know why your customers do what they do, visit daydo.com and explore more resources to accelerate your customer experience game. And remember, the journey to creating customer-centric impact never ends. And here's always a new edge to discover in doing things differently. Next week, new episode. Until then, pushing the edge, stay inspired. See you in the next episode.